Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are really undertaking a critical exploration into the world of the modern Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO.
That's right.
We're not just looking at the tech side, but really the strategic thinking, the hard data, and frankly, the huge internal shifts that security leaders need to manage in this, well, let's face it, high-stakes, AI-driven world.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
the sources we've pulled together for today, I mean, we've got proprietary hacker data,
Yeah.
insights from seasoned execs like Nick McKenzie, Tomas Maldonado, Dan Maslin. They're all pointing towards building what they term collective resilience. It's all about collaboration, continuous testing.
Okay.
So our mission, really, for you listening, is to distill those key trends, look at objective ways to, actually measure security success, and figure out how CISOs can talk about existential risk in a way the board actually understands.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this because the scale of the challenge here, it's just evolving so incredibly fast. We need to cover, well, everything from a really surprising jump in hardware vulnerabilities all the way to that big question, is AI going to replace human hackers? This is a really crucial deep dive for anyone touching enterprise risk. So let's start at the beginning. The CISO's strategy, that inflection point.
Right. We really have to start with a backdrop, what some are calling the AI paradox. Nick McKenzie puts it pretty bluntly in the CISO letter we looked at. He says, AI is everywhere, and frankly, many of us are sick of talking about it.
Yeah, I get that fatigue.
It's totally understandable with the hype.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't change the reality. Security leaders are right in the middle of this innovation race. Every single AI advance makes the security landscape, well, he says, exponentially more complex.
So that's the paradox. AI helps defend, but it also supercharges the attackers.
Yeah.
How does a CISO not just get overwhelmed by all the noise?
It boils down to what the sources are calling essentially sensible decision-making. Look, the CISO's job isn't to jump on every new LLM or generative AI tool that comes out.
Right.
It's about adopting AI only, where it gives you real, measurable, integrated value. Maybe automating alert triage or improving threat intel analysis or even making policy enforcement smoother. If the tool doesn't directly cut complexity or boost efficiency, it's probably just more noise.
That focus on integration and crucially measurable value, that seems vital, especially since, as you said, the complexity is growing beyond what any single company can handle alone.
Exactly. And that feeds directly into this idea of collective resilience. The sources are really clear on this. The era of the CISO as a lone wolf, relying only on their own team and tech, that's over. Attackers share knowledge globally. They benefit from that complexity. So the defense has to be global, too. It has to be deeply collaborative.
Tell me more about what that collaboration actually looks like. Is it more than just like sharing IOCs? It sounds like pooling real operational knowledge about how attackers operate.
It is precisely that. It means actively building resilience across industries. Think ISACs, the information sharing and analysis centers, but also private communities. By sharing tactical intel, specific attack methods, real-world test results, the whole defender community can get ahead.
So moving beyond isolated fire drills.
Right. The goal is pooling that knowledge to actually outpace the threats, to win as one unified force, as one source put it. This really changes the CISO's job description. It's not just about protecting your own network anymore. It's about contributing to the whole ecosystem's security.
That's a pretty big shift in mindset. So if collaboration is the bedrock, what does success or maybe confidence look like for today's CSO?
Well, the sources define real CISO confidence, the kind that holds up under pressure. It's coming from three linked things. First, continuous community-powered testing. Second, security programs that are genuinely augmented by AI, not just sprinkled with it. And third, the skill to translate risk into language the board understands. This whole integrated package moves you away from just hoping your controls work.
To actually proving they do under real fire.
Exactly.
That really sets the table for everything else we need to talk about. It highlights that core tension, that blunt statement. Security without true adversarial testing is just an illusion. You can throw money at it, but if you don't test against a live thinking adversary, you're just guessing based on reports.
It's theory versus reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
The CISOs who are succeeding, they're moving past those subjective checklists, the self-assessments, the static scores. They're embracing the objective truth you only get from adversarial simulation.
Like trying on the armor.
You got it. If you want to know if it works, someone has to take a shot at it.
All
Okay,
right.
So let's pivot now. Let's look at where those shots are actually landing right now based on the latest data.
Right, this is where we get into the hard evidence. Our sources have proprietary vulnerability data showing where the ethical hackers are finding holes, where organizations are really exposed. And the trends over the last year, they show some pretty critical blind spots.
Okay, first up, what's surging? We saw a really significant jump, 88% increase in hardware vulnerabilities found. That's
Yeah.
huge.
88%. Wow.
And the detail here is important. 81% of the researchers said they found a new hardware vulnerability in the last year, one they'd never encountered before.
Hold on, why hardware? Why such a massive spike now? Is it just supply chain chaos, or are companies finally looking beyond software?
It's probably a bit of both. We're seeing defenses expand. Organizations realize, their internal software might be locked down pretty well, but what about the physical gear? The IoT devices,
Right.
the components in their supply chain, those often get neglected. Hardware's complex, often involves older systems, and it just doesn't get scanned in the same routine way software does. That 81% finding new stuff, it confirms this isn't just finding known CVEs again. It suggests there's this big undiscovered attack surface in the silicon, in the firmware, that's now being actively poked and prodded by good guys and bad guys.
Noted. Okay, moving up the stack to software targets, APIs. We saw a 10% overall increase in API vulnerabilities, but you said the data needs careful reading here.
Yeah, because the critical API vulnerabilities, what we call P1s, priority ones, the really bad, immediately exploitable ones, those actually decreased by 25%.
Okay, decrease in criticals. That sounds good.
It is, actually.
Yeah.
It's likely a sign of maturing defenses. It suggests companies are putting in better tools, W-Waves, API gateways, and developers are getting better at catching those huge infrastructure-breaking bugs earlier.
But the overall number is still going up.
Right, because organizations are testing more. They're expanding their scope beyond just the main entry points to include more complex, maybe lower severity API interactions that they weren't looking at before.
Got it. And beyond apps, network targets doubled. A 2x increase in network vulnerabilities found. That fits the theme of expanding scope, right? Looking beyond just the website.
Absolutely. It aligns perfectly with that CISO strategy shift we talked about.
Yeah.
Stop just worrying about the main corporate site and look at the whole connected mess, IoT, internal networks, cloud stuff.
Okay, but drilling down into the type of flaw, you said the real surge was in access and exposure.
Yeah, broken access control. That category saw the biggest jump overall, up 40%. And maybe more worrying, a 36% increase in P1 critical vulnerabilities, specifically for broken access control.
40% overall, 36% jump in criticals. That means more people getting into places or data they shouldn't. Why is that specific thing surging now?
We got some great comments from hackers on this. DK999 argues it's a direct result of how we build software now. Apps are super complex, right? Microservices, tons of integrations, different teams working on different bits.
Yeah, complexity makes controlled harder.
Inherently harder to manage and audit robustly. And it's a velocity problem too. DK999 pointed this out. Developers are under pressure to release features fast.
Get it out the door.
Exactly. And the careful, time-consuming work of getting authorization and authentication right often takes a back seat. DK999 actually flagged the AI coding assistants here too. Focuses speed, access controls get overlooked. They predict this category will just keep climbing because these bugs are often easy to exploit but have huge impact.
That speed issue seems linked to the next big one too. Sensitive data exposure. A 42% increase in critical P1 sensitive data exposure vulns. That's alarming. That's PII, IP, financial data just out there.
It is alarming, and Hacker Insider PhD gave a really sobering take. They call these issues boring compared to, like, a fancy zero-day.
Yeah, not glamorous.
Not glamorous at all, but catastrophic in impact. Yeah. We're talking about major organizational screw-ups. Employee tokens left in public code repositories, databases holding unencrypted PII. These lead straight to regulatory nightmares, potential extortion.
And the scary part is how long it can last. Insider PhD said attackers can end up living rent-free inside your systems for ages, just quietly siphoning off data. It's not a quick hit, it's a slow burn crisis.
And this focus on criticality, on the really damaging stuff, it shows up directly in the money. The payout data is a key CISO metric. Overall average payout stayed pretty flat, but the average payout for critical P1 vulnerabilities jumped by 32% in 2024.
A 32% increase just for the P1s, that's a strong market signal. What's that tell us about how companies are spending their security dollars?
It tells us they're explicitly trying to buy down catastrophic risk. They're focusing their testing budgets, their bug bounty programs, to heavily reward finding those highest severity, business-breaking P1s, even if it means, maybe paying a bit less for the lower-level P3s, P4s, P5s to balance the books. The money follows the risk. The data shows CISO investment is laser-focused on stopping the flaws that pose a real, immediate threat to business continuity.
Okay, so threats are accelerating. Critical flaws cost more to find and fix. Which brings us right back to that huge CSO challenge, convincing the board that the millions they're spending on security are actually, working.
Ah, yes, the Sisyphus problem. The sources nailed this analogy. The CISO is Sisyphus, pushing that massive budget boulder up the hill to the board. They almost get there. They present their case for fixing things,
Yeah.
and then the next budget cycle starts and the boulder rolls right back down.
Oof. What does that do to the team, to the CSO, that constant justification cycle?
It leads to real organizational burnout. The CISO feels like they're always starting from zero, defending the whole program. Team morale tanks, vital upgrades get pushed back, and security just gets seen as a cost center, not something enabling the business. And it's because that traditional measure of success, we didn't get breached this quarter. It's invisible. You can't prove a negative, right? So budget justification is this endless uphill battle they often lose.
So the answer is ditch the subjective stuff and get objective proof.
Exactly. You have to shift away from those, let's be honest, often arbitrary maturity scores or self-assessments. You need the objective measurement that only comes from adversarial testing. That gives you the pragmatic validation.
Pragmatic validation, I like that.
Think about the NIST definition of resilience, the ability to maintain required capability in the face of adversity. Well, how do you know if you have that ability unless you actually face some adversity? Adversarial testing is how you evaluate your defenses under actual stress.
So the testing isn't just about finding new holes. It's about proving the value of the investments you've already made in people, process, tech.
Absolutely. The results from good adversarial testing give you the hard data to see if that expensive EDR solution or that new training program or those complex processes are actually paying off in the real world. One source pointed out how hard it is for CISOs to, say, fire a vendor whose tech isn't working because of the cost and politics.
Right, the sunk cost fallacy.
Totally. Red teaming cuts through that. It gives you that objective data to say, look, this investment, it's not delivering against a real-world attack. Or, hopefully, this is working, and here's the proof.
Okay, let's dive into red teaming specifically then, because this sounds like the ultimate diagnostic stress test for the whole organization's immune system.
It really is. A red team engagement isn't just a vulnerability scan. It's a full-scope, realistic attack simulation. They operate stealthily, persistently, trying to achieve a specific business goal like stealing customer data or getting admin rights without getting caught. And its core functions are vital.
First, keeping the blue team honest.
Yeah, validating the blue team to the defenders. How quickly do they detect? How well do they respond to a sophisticated, evasive attack? It forces them into a real-world stress test. Second, it challenges your assumptions. Do those controls you bought, the EDR, MFA, WFs, actually work under pressure? Do the policies hold up? Tech often fails in ways simple checks miss.
And the third one, that sounds like the most, maybe, insightful, revealing the human and process flaws that tech scans just can't see.
This is often where the gold is. Red teams are brilliant at elicitation. They might call different departments, pretending to be an auditor or a new hire, just asking seemingly innocent questions.
Like social engineering, basically.
Exactly. Gathering little bits of internal intel. Who's on call tonight? What's the internal jargon for this system? What monitoring tools do you use? And this reveals systemic problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Things like nobody's really clear who is on call for this critical system after hours, or the SOC, the Security Operations Center, is so swamped they just ignore low-severity alerts that could be the start of something big. Or IT and security don't communicate well when something actually happens. These are organizational weaknesses a red team finds before a real attacker does.
The human layer is always the squishiest part, isn't it? We even have specific examples of how attackers and red teams get around those layered defenses.
Yeah, the defensive onion, right. Clever adversaries just keep finding ways to peel it back. For identity stuff, MFA fatigue attacks are huge right now.
That's where they just spam your phone with push notifications.
Yep, at 3 a.m., hoping you'll just tap allow to make it stop out of annoyance or half-asleep confusion.
Yeah.
And the sources note a success rate between 10% and 30%. Think about that. That's a measurable human failure rate that CISOs absolutely have to account for.
Wow. Okay. And against endpoint security, the EDRs?
Red teams use custom tools, heavily obfuscated code. They basically wrap their malware to look harmless so it slips past the EDR agent. Just reinforces the point. Sophisticated attacks rarely rely on one magic bullet. They exploit the gaps and process failures between your defensive layers. Red teaming gives you that cold, hard data on where those real-world gaps are.
Okay, so adversarial testing gives the CSO the objective data, but they still face the hurdle of translating that into something the board understands and cares about. It's bridging that context gap, right?
That's the crux of it. The board approves massive investments for growth, but security budgets often get frozen. Why? Because the board often lacks the technical context to really evaluate security proposals. They hear vulnerability and think IT issue, not potential revenue hit or brand damage.
So the CSO has to be the translator in chief.
Exactly. Helping the board grasp the tangible business impact of cyber risk and helping them calibrate how much risk they're actually willing to accept.
And the sources were really clear. Any good board presentation has to nail three fundamental questions.
Right. The board needs clarity. They want to know, one, what do I need to, the current state, the critical trends like the API surge or the AI paradox we discussed.
Okay.
Two, why do I care? This is critical.
Hmm.
You must map the technical risk directly to business drivers, operational impact, revenue loss, brand reputation, compliance fines.
Make it real for them.
Make it real. And three, what do you need from me? The specific ask. Is it funding? Is it executive backing for a policy change? Is it a decision on risk appetite? Be precise.
But the key you mentioned earlier is making it a story, a narrative, not just a data dump.
Absolutely. It has to be an ongoing conversation, building on past decisions, providing context. Tomas Maldonado, the NFL CISO, he really champions this. He talks about transparency, framing risk in business terms, avoiding jargon like firewalls or CVE.
Uses real-world examples.
Yeah, he references big public ransomware attacks hitting other organizations and then maps that specific threat back to the NFL's operations, their brand, making it immediate and tangible for his leadership.
I also found Dan Maslin's advice on scenario planning really smart for building that narrative. He says, move beyond just plotting likelihood versus consequence on a grid.
Right. Maslin pushes for developing specific, tailored, threat-informed scenarios, things that are realistic for your industry, your organization. So instead of just saying medium risk of data loss, you present a scenario like advanced threat actors use phishing to breach the finance team during quarter end, aiming to disrupt reporting.
And then you assess your controls against that specific scenario.
Precisely. You rate how well your defense's staff training, access controls, EDR would actually perform against that concrete attack path. It leads to a much more practical discussion about mitigation rather than just arguing at abstract risk levels.
Okay, let's get really practical then. The do's and don'ts for the actual board deck. Consistency and clarity seem paramount for building that trust.
Yeah, the sources had some great actionable tips. On the DO side, always use that narrative approach. Connect back to previous decisions. And this is huge. Use dashboards with meaningful binary metrics.
Binary metrics, like yes, no, compliant, non-compliant. Why are those so much better than, say, a percentage score that fluctuates?
Because they speak the language of finance and insurance. Think about it. Are 100% of critical staff trained annually on incident response? Yes or no? Is security baseline compliance met across all Tier 1 assets? Yes or no? These clear binary answers provide concrete evidence of diligence.
Ah, I see.
Underwriters, insurance folks, they correlate these kinds of binary metrics directly with breach likelihood and potential payout liability. If a CISO can consistently show yes on these key diligence points, it demonstrably lowers the organization's quantifiable risk profile. It affects insurance premiums, it sets a floor for liability, it makes the security argument financially tangible for the board.
That makes total sense. Translates process directly into dollars and cents. Okay, so what are the big donies?
Don't treat the board meeting like a technical status update.
Oh.
They don't need the weeds. Don't keep changing your core metrics every quarter. It looks like you're hiding something or just chasing vanity numbers, and it destroys trust. And definitely don't show up with big funding requests without crystal clear justification tied directly back to a specific risk you've identified, ideally through that adversarial testing. Show the problem, show the cost of inaction, show how the investment solves it.
That measurable outcome really is the common thread here. CISOs need that objective feedback. They need specialized resources. They need strategic guidance to build that resilience. And ultimately, get the resources they need.
It's a critical need, and it's especially relevant as we're wrapping up Cybersecurity Awareness Month here in October 2025, where the focus is so often on that strategic preparation and getting the right resources in place.
And speaking of resources and support, we really want to take a moment to thank our partners who are focused specifically on supporting CISOs and security leaders in exactly these kinds of efforts. CISOmarketplace.com and CISOmarketplace.services.
Yeah, they really work to help security leaders connect with the solutions, the guidance, the peer insights needed to achieve those objective, measurable security outcomes we've been talking about today.
So thank you to them for their support, especially as we close out Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2025.
That kind of ecosystem support is absolutely vital because CISOs aren't just dealing with today's threats, they're also trying to navigate these massive, transformative shifts coming next. Which brings us nicely to the future landscape, especially around AI.
So we kicked off wondering if AI is going to put human security researchers out of a job. Having looked at the sources, what's the consensus from the hackers themselves on AI replacement?
Well, the general feeling, articulated nicely by the hacker P3T3R4BBNT, is that right now AI is definitely complementary, not competitive. It's a tool for humans, not a replacement of them.
Okay. So where does AI excel?
Speed, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Scanning huge amounts of code or assets incredibly quickly. Finding that low-hanging fruit, the common vulnerabilities, much faster. It can also help manage the complexity of tooling, so definitely useful.
But the human edge is still crucial for the really tricky stuff. Where does AI fall short today?
Yeah, humans still bring the critical thinking, the creativity, that deep contextual understanding you need for complex hacks. P3T3 for BAMFBT pointed out, AI struggles to really go deep into a system. It doesn't have that intuition to, say, cleverly bypass a custom WAF rule, or understand the unique business logic of an application to find a flaw there.
Chaining small things together for big impact.
Exactly. Finding those unique business context, vulnerabilities, chaining minor issues together, that's still very much a human skill requiring ingenuity and context AI just doesn't have yet.
Okay, so AI boosts speed, humans bring the deep thinking. But this balance raises a really interesting, maybe slightly worrying point about vulnerability disclosure in the future, this opacity risk.
This is a real potential headache for that whole collective resilience idea we talked about. If we get to a point where AI tools find vulnerabilities way faster than humans can ethically report them, well, it might discourage researchers from sharing their best stuff publicly.
Why would they hold back?
Because keeping those sophisticated techniques private, or maybe selling them exclusively to the AI companies building defensive tools, becomes their competitive advantage. It could lead to more secrecy, which is the exact opposite of the collaborative defense CISOs need.
So CISOs need to plan for a future where the really cutting-edge threat intelligence might be harder to come by, more locked down.
Potentially, yes. It creates possible blind spots if the best knowledge isn't being shared broadly.
Okay, so dealing with smarter, faster, maybe more secretive adversaries. That means you need an even clearer picture of your own vulnerabilities. Which brings us to operationalizing EASM, External Attack Surface Management.
Right, EASM. First, what is it? It's basically the ongoing process of discovering, mapping, and monitoring everything your organization exposes to the internet, all from an attacker's point of view.
And the problem today is that Surface is just exploding, right?
Yeah.
Cloud, APIs, shadow IT.
Exploding, creating huge blind spots. Teams try to manage it, but often with separate tools, data gets stale, context is lost. It's messy. So the solution isn't just buying an EASM tool, it's plugging it into everything else.
Exactly. The real value comes when you integrate that EASM intelligence directly into your offensive testing workflows, your bug bounty program, your red teaming, your pen tests. You create this automated feedback loop.
How does that work in practice?
So the EASM spots a newly exposed asset, maybe a forgotten test server or a new API pops up. That intel automatically flags it for targeted testing. Find it, test it, fix it, fast.
So you move from just reacting to alerts to actually making decisions based on current intelligence about your real exposure.
Exactly. It makes security way more efficient, ensures you're continuously validating your entire perimeter, not just the bits you remembered to scan, and crucially, it gives you measurable outcomes to show the board. We found this risk, we tested it, we fixed it. That continuous loop is key for proactive defense.
Let's wrap with a concrete example of getting ahead of the curve. That Monash University AI supercomputer story with Dan Maslin.
Oh yeah, this is a fantastic case study in doing security right, proactively. Maslin showed security can't be bolted on later. He got involved more than 6 months before the supercomputer project even launched.
6 months early. Wow.
Yeah, evaluating every single aspect,
Mm.
physical security of the data center, checking the hardware supply chain, vetting staff, setting up vulnerability disclosure policies,
Mm.
all before a single user logged in.
So building security into the project's DNA from day one, not just ticking boxes later.
Exactly. And he openly admitted the core challenge every CISO faces. Even a huge, well-funded place like Monash couldn't possibly hire enough internal staff to continuously test everything, the mobile apps, the network, the supercomputer. So it's just too much, too dynamic.
So what was his solution?
He said they had to leverage the crowd. His words were something like needing the variety of skills available within a crowd of ethical hackers to make sure they found vulnerabilities first. It perfectly sums up that strategic need for continuous, community-powered, objective testing that we started with. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into the CISO's world, it's really brought some essential points into focus. We've seen that resilience today, it's not built in isolation. It relies on collective knowledge, on community collaboration.
Yeah.
And we understand now that objective measurement, especially through that adversarial testing, is just non-negotiable if you want to prove your program's value. And finally, that clear, consistent storytelling to the board framed in business risk, using those threat scenarios, that's what unlocks the funding and support.
And that CISO confidence we talked about,
Yeah.
it really seems to hang on mastering that balance between human creativity and AI speed. Like Nick McKenzie said, the goalposts are always moving. The moment you figure out how to answer that question, the goalposts will move again. Adaptability is everything.
Which leads us perfectly to our final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. It builds right on that AI acceleration paradox and the need for continuous testing. If we accept that AI will make attacks faster, bigger, maybe stealthier, then isn't the real test of resilience less about stopping that first inevitable breach and more about how quickly and effectively the human element, the defenders, the leaders, the processes, can detect, adapt, and learn from whatever comes next? If attacks get faster, what new kinds of human errors or process breakdowns will these AI-driven threats expose in the year ahead?